Before we begin today's video, I just wanted to let you know that my game, Project Remind, has just made its way into the quarterfinals of the WN Development Contest, a massive international video game competition for games built using Unreal Engine 4. I'm up against some absolutely incredible games with huge multi-person teams, and I would absolutely love it if you could give my submission in this game a quick like. It would help me out greatly. Thanks a lot, and let's get on with the video. Oh boy, this one was a rabbit hole. Welcome back. So the last few weeks, we've seen a lot of NFT news coming out. In fact, I'd say it's gone from being pretty obscure and niche to being one of the most covered topics in the world. In fact, it's been big enough and loud enough that it's been able to pull me out of my game development tunnel vision and ask, firstly, what on earth is it? And secondly, what's it got to do with art? I decided to take a day or two off of game development and do a short research project into what NFTs might mean for my kind of work, which is virtual reality and world building. And the best way to explain that to you is to go back a week or two. So, it's early March 2021, and it's late at night at some point. And as I've been doing for the last few weeks, I am programming, testing, and modeling different puzzles for my game. Maybe I was scrolling the news, maybe I was listening to a podcast as I worked, I don't remember, but I started hearing this word come up, NFT. And after only a day or two, it was absolutely everywhere. So, at first I gathered that NFTs might let you sell art online somehow, which sounds kind of interesting. I tend to make what some people might think of as art. Second thing I learned is that a few artists, typically huge ones, and then a few non-artists as well, were suddenly selling pieces for, well, a tremendous amount of money, which is fair enough. So I did what I think a lot of people did. I clicked on a couple of articles to see exactly what NFTs might be, and why people were suddenly selling work that was previously either obscure or not for sale for unbelievable amounts of money. And when I learned that NFTs were a type of crypto contract, all of a sudden a lot of this hype started to make a bit more sense. And as I typically do with a lot of things that I feel are overhyped and also don't directly pertain to what I do as a person, I took a step back and decided to ignore as much of it as I could, especially all of the mainstream media stuff that basically just said NFTs equal millions and millions of dollars and everyone's getting rich, and we've all heard this narrative before with the dot-com bubble and with Bitcoin. It's not new. But oh boy did it become difficult. Over the couple of weeks after that, NFTs became more and more the hot topic, and the sheer volume of articles and YouTube videos and editorials and opinions on NFTs eventually came together and cracked through my filter. And I decided that the only way that I could stop letting all of this hype get to me was to confront NFTs and to understand them a little bit better. And the more I looked, the more NFTs are absolutely starting to make an appearance in video games and video game technology. So, as with all transformative technologies, you'd better hope that you can come to understand it and perhaps even use it, otherwise you're going to be steamrolled by it. So, I set myself the challenge of making a virtual reality NFT. So, step one was to figure out what I could make in a couple of days. I knew that I wanted to make it visually quite pretty, but I also needed to minimize the amount of programming, coding, and modeling that I'd have to do. So I settled on a very simple solar concept that I've been riffing on for my main game for the last few weeks, where the entire space is lit by a giant glowing sun in the middle. I thought of it as a citadel or a gallery, and the whole point of it was just somewhere that you could kind of be and occupy space. Early on in the early days of virtual reality, that was one of my absolute favourite things about building VR worlds, was just to spend time in them, and I wanted to call back to that kind of feeling. I'm just going to overlay some of the modelling work that I did to build this space. It was fairly straightforward in the end. All it really consisted of was a sphere in the centre to represent the sun, a concentric promenade that surrounded that sphere, and then 4 rooms off to the side that were angled at 90 degrees apart from each other. The initial plan was for the entire process to take approximately, I don't know, a morning, But in the end, it ended up taking more like a day and a half to 2 days. And I would put that entirely down to me just not giving it enough time in the initial plan. I just really wanted to rush this entire project. You know, sometimes you just get impatient to see your work. But it didn't take us too long to get right to the Unreal Engine side of things, which is my absolute favorite part. I had to texture everything fairly quickly. I needed to get this project done as quickly as I could. And I used Substance and a few different quick Substance workflows to just get the textures made. I also decided fairly late on that I wanted the 8 planets to orbit the sun as well. That was fairly straightforward to get done. I just offset each one of them a certain distance from the center of the sun and then added a rotation component. And once you control the speed, you get a pretty nice effect to just get the planets kind of orbiting the sun. Dial it in, balance it out, scale a few of the spheres to be different sizes, and you're good to go. And then the final thing I did was just add a little bit of text here and there, as well as different sounds to the different rooms in the experience. And that pretty much takes you where you need to be. It was a highly enjoyable 2.5-day project. That was a fantastic contrast to Project Remind, my main project, which I am in love with, but is also long. Very long. And the final thing to do was to have an explore around in it to make sure that it worked. As you can see, I've used a very simple baseline navigation system, which is wonderfully different to what I'm doing with Project Remind. Again, I've spent a long time programming in VR mechanics for the last year or so, and whilst I could have imported them over, it would have just added a day or two of programming to this process, and that would have gotten in the way of learning. So I used Unreal Engine's fantastic VR template, and that was enough for this very simple experience. It's lightweight and it's efficient. And with that, that's pretty much the world element of this learning project done. Now again, I'll remind you, the thing that I wanted to do was to build a virtual reality NFT. And I was doing this as a way to challenge myself to learn more about NFTs. So now that I had this world, I had to figure out how I was going to package it as an NFT and what that would allow me to do. And so I began what turned into an incredibly long rabbit hole of NFT research to try and figure out what they were and how to use them. So my first big question with NFTs was, how do you actually link the piece of artwork, or in my case the virtual world, to the NFT token? How do you do that? And the answer is different depending on precisely what it is you're wanting to do with the NFTs. The first thing that I've seen is that a lot of companies use NFTs to signify a token of ownership within their own platform. So say for example, there have been video games where you've been able to buy either characters or in-game purchasables. And the NFT is basically a very solid way of saying that this character or this account owns this NFT, which means that as the game was to be updated or changed or ported in the future, there would still be a record of your ownership of this item. And since 2017, when I believe NFTs were first introduced, this has been the main way that they've functioned. But in the last few weeks, it's not been the way that I think everyone has been seeing them perform. Right now, the hype surrounding NFTs is the way that artists are using them to sell artwork. Now, effectively in this context, the NFT represents a token of ownership given from the artist to a buyer. Now, to the best of my understanding, what an artist will do is list their piece of artwork on a NFT collection. Now, effectively, once it's there, it symbolizes a token of ownership, a contract between the artist and whoever might want to buy it. It doesn't grant you intellectual property ownership, rather it just grants you ownership of that one piece of artwork, typically. But there seems to be a grey area with exactly what is transferred over, and it really depends from the platform that you buy the NFT from. And I think this is the key thing that I'm trying to take away from this entire exercise. An NFT isn't an online art auction where you make an unbelievable amount of money. That's just one of the small applications of what an NFT can do. Rather, it seems to be a way to encode a contract or note of ownership into a blockchain, which is incredibly difficult to destroy. Rightly or wrongly, I currently understand it as a 21st century indestructible receipt. And having gone through this entire process of making my own NFT listing on an art website, which was a great learning experience, I think the thing that I take away most from this is how I've come to understand NFTs and their potential in virtual worlds in the future as being the thing that I find most interesting. And also potentially most dangerous. Now, My core belief about virtual reality is that if it's used properly, it can be one of the most important tools humanity has ever developed to bring us together, to connect us, to take us to new worlds, and give new depth and new meaning to our species for the next couple of centuries. I know that's a lot, but I genuinely think the technology could get us there one day. And one of the most important ways it can do that is it can basically bring orders of magnitude more accessibility to space and to creation than what we have today. Right now, pretty much everything that we can do and build is limited by our access to land. Land is scarce and it's very expensive as a result of that, because there's a lot of people on this planet now. But in virtual reality, land is limitless. And one of the first things I've seen NFTs doing is effectively bringing a level of scarcity to virtual space that I think is frankly pointless and speculative. But then on the flip side, NFTs can also be used as a great way to tag ownership or creation credit to people that have built virtual worlds, as long as they don't become a limiter on how many we can have. And so as a result of their absolute transformative power, I'm going to have to keep my eye on them over the next few years and do what I can to make sure that their contribution to the future of virtual worlds is a good one and not one that's going to put limits on what we can do, where we can go, or what we can build. I don't think it'll come to that, and I do think that NFTs or their successor or a better version of them will end up being incredibly important and will probably be quite empowering. But between now and then, I think we're going to see a lot of virtual land speculation and a lot of companies that propose to add value to land by limiting the amount you can buy on the platform. And that's all well and good until another company comes along and offers creators unlimited quantities of what they can build. Ultimately, I think virtual space will be very similar to YouTube videos. Its value will be determined on how much you can get people to visit it. But that is a topic for another day. For now, I'll finish off this process by showing you the NFT listing that I ended up making. In the process of making this NFT, I realized that actually what I need to know about them is less to do with how to sell them as art pieces, because ultimately I'm a VR world builder. It's a cool side project to do this, but it's not what I want to do. Rather, I'm just glad I learned about the tech. And for artists, and just anyone in general actually, feeling tremendously like they're missing out at the moment, just remember that we've been here before. With the .com bubble, with the Bitcoin boom of a couple of years ago and its resurgence right now. Hell, in the 17th century, a bubble like this happened with tulips, and it generated so much money that even our tech companies today can't compete. So if you feel that you are in a position to level-headedly enter this market and make informed decisions, that's up to you to decide whether or not you want to. But for me, and just for me, at the very least, I think having come to understand NFTs a bit more, a lot of that initial freak out has been smoothed over, and I'm quite happy about that. And I think that'll allow me to get back to doing what I personally believe in doing, which is finishing this game. And hopefully now I can do it in somewhat more peace. Now, I'll be back soon with more videos on virtual reality, Unreal Engine, and world building in general. That MetaHumans video I made a couple of weeks ago went down quite well, and I'd like to thank you all so much for taking the time to watch it. Leave a comment about the other kind of things that you want to see, and I'll see if I can fit those in as topics as well. I've been making videos for about a year now, and whilst my channel growth has been slow, the feedback I've had from people actually watching the videos has been so kind. So once again, thank you so much. And now I'm going to go make some more video game. Thank you all so much for watching, and take care.